Our guest today is Kathy Ellis. She is an intercultural trainer who holds a master's in education and has had a lifetime of intercultural communication and language training. Kathy was inspired by foreign exchange students who presented at her elementary school. She has lived in 7 countries, she has learned 2 additional languages, and she has traveled to over 45 and now resides in Atlanta, Georgia. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the amazing Kathy Ellis.
Hey, hello.
So, Kathy, you have lived in so many countries and are a professional in the field of communication, of helping us understand each other, helping us bridge that gap. And so, could you tell us a little bit about your background, please?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I started as small town, Midwest USA. There wasn't much diversity. Diversity was having a German last name and an English last name. And I was a curious person, so I went into the high school exchange student program, and
Mm,
that took off just like an airplane. And I said, oh, there's a different world than my little town. And I think I want to know more.
yes.
And so at the age of 17, I went off and it hasn't stopped. And I became more curious and more curious. And then because in college, I majored in education. So there was kind of that learning education part. And
Yes.
then from there, working on the degrees, but also living in 6 countries. And sometimes I include Texas in there. Um,
That
and
was, yeah.
and then flying, like I probably have visited or about 40 countries, 45 countries. And while you're living abroad, you have an opportunity also to travel to all the neighboring countries. So
Yes.
that was really so. I hope to do much more traveling, and that's I think I always say I'm not a very good tourist, but I'm a good traveler. And
Yes.
so when I go, I don't, it's like I want to sit in a cafe and just meet the people and talk to them. And so
Mm,
that's kind of what in a nutshell. That's what I do and that's who I am.
I think we're kind of twin souls in that respect. And
Yeah.
so you talk a lot about this cross-cultural mindset, and we've had lots of people on talking about cross-cultural everything from intelligence to emotions to communication. What is the difference between having a cross-cultural mindset and simply acknowledging that, oh, this place is different. The food's different, the language is different, the people are different. Can you tell us or explain to us what you see that difference to be?
Well, one, because if you just see the difference, that's above the what they call the iceberg, right?
Yes,
It's above the surface of the water. That's all good and fine because that's a part of the process. And when I mentioned earlier, as a young age, kind of like, oh, they eat differently. That's where I was at, a very basic level. The cross-cultural is going to go way under the water. And
yes,
the farther down you go in the water, the less clear it is, the ambiguity of it all. And so that cross-cultural mindset is being able, not only are you aware and you understand, I go to the DMIS, there's levels, sometimes not so linear as that, but there's levels that you can go in and function like a pendulum, kind of go back and forth within those. Hopefully, I don't know if we say higher level, but when you go into that understanding piece and then the integration or the adaptation and all of those pieces is that cross-cultural
yeah,
mindset. And so
yeah,
I kind of remember the idea when I lived in Texas, I mentioned earlier, that Texas was a big challenge for me at the time. And they used to have, I remember seeing these t-shirts that said bilingual, bicultural, and by myself. And
Interesting.
yeah, and that was in the 80s in Texas. And I was in the bilingual program in the education system, in the bilingual program. So they would have that at the conferences. And so
And what did
sometimes,
that mean? What did that mean? What did that t-shirt mean to you?
well, at the time, because it was a different time period, is that a lot of people, bicultural and bilingual, felt by themselves. They
Yes.
were an exception.
Yes.
And now, hopefully, we've progressed in some fashion.
Mm,
And now, I'm not so much by myself. So they're playing with words too. But
yes.
I think that's what it means to me. Yeah.
Yes, sometimes words are only tools and we have to use them effectively. And I have to laugh because I often say that Texas was my best foreign assignment. So coming from Scotland,
Oh,
um, I've had many assignments abroad, but when we moved back from Saudi Arabia, I was really familiar with Texans because many of our professional oil field people that worked for Saudi Aramco, which was the corporation we had worked for, many of them were from Texas. So I understood a little bit. I understood the dialect. I understood some of the phraseology and really the great heartedness of it. And I tried to connect to that more than anything. But when I moved to Texas, all my friends were foreigners. And
hmm.
it was very interesting because we lived downtown, most of us, and I had friends from people I'm still in touch with and stay connected to from Scotland, Ireland, Canada, South Africa, Australia. And we were a pact. Just, it's amazing how you can build community out of being by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you tied that kind of a, I don't know if you want to call it a full circle, but you tied it together. And
Yes, and we always have the opportunity to do that, don't we?
yes. Yeah. And also, when you live in those communities, it is closer.
Yes,
Like when you live in these different countries, you do become closer. The friendships are different. And that's a big thing to be in common is somebody who's experiencing somewhat the same thing you are
yes,
as a newcomer or as a foreigner or whatever,
yes.
and that. I lived in El Salvador for a year and it was during the war.
Oh
And so,
my.
yeah, I was there. And, just that experience, I call it a good, bad experience because you really feel that
Yeah,
Civil War. You feel
yeah.
it at the naive age of 22, 23, I think I was. And then you really have close connections with people because it's not only friendship, it's survival when you're in
Yes,
that environment. And,
yes,
that's what it taught me.
yes,
Uh,
yes. That that idea that you could be suffering a level of trauma together
mhm.
really builds, doesn't it?
It
It really
does.
builds connection. It builds those human connections.
It
So
does.
tell me, I know we're going to talk a little bit about repatriation towards the end of this, but um, can you describe the strategies that you have employed or that you see some of your clients consistently applying that really help them nurture a positive mindset, whether they're leaving or going or in that adaptation phase of getting comfortable with a new culture?
Yeah, I think the word positive is very important. Positivity goes a long ways.
Yeah.
And if they can find humor in it, I think that's so important. Like I've had people, and I said, make whatever it is. Most people, let's say, for example, because mostly I'm working with people who are newcomers to the US, they want to be here. And it could be for their children to go to an English speaking school, being in the
Yeah.
system. There's different motivations. Maybe they got promoted, but they are looking. And so that I already assume, I make some assumptions. If they're here, they are curious and they are adventurous.
Mm,
And so in that is already a positivity there. Now, the non-working spouse may have other, I've been with families or whatever that they weren't all on the same page.
yes. Yeah.
So you kind of think about what makes sense to them as far as, and you're throwing out some ideas and what makes sense to them that they can nurture themselves
Mm.
and accept the challenge, work with the challenges. I shouldn't use accept. I think the word is to work with the challenges that are coming up because it's not always predictable, your feelings about things. And I go to feelings because emotion is a lot of it. And
Yeah.
so it might be in that. So I think a sense of humor, like sometimes I had one client and he started a blog and with his family and friends, and anything he would find funny, and he would take pictures and post. Or I've had other people like things they wouldn't see in their country, but they see here in the U.S. Um, to go with that. But also to, part of the strategy also is the daily life. What is it that you can do so
Mm.
you don't sink too low? And that's the
Mm.
process of adaptation. So you don't go too low in the process. So I don't know if I answered your question. I mean, a strategy, it just varies.
Yeah, it varies from person to person. So what I
Yeah.
heard you say was strategy is very personal, and
Mm-hmm.
strategy can be related to the emotional component and how a person is feeling or reacting, because we all feel and react differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, above all, positivity and humor. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have to share that yes, I look for the humor, especially in the really hard times. But that's a story for another day. I think finding the humor, but also recording it and remembering it and writing it down is very important and
It is.
extremely helpful. So,
It
what
is.
are the most common emotional experiences that people have? And is it depression? Is it isolation? We experience all of these things, I would think.
I
What
would
do you
think
see the
so.
most in your practice? What do you see the most?
I would say frustration.
Ah,
So when it comes to, because let's say the first 3 months, 6 months that they're here, they have to set up camp. Credit history,
yes,
not none. And so they said, so there's some frustration in there. But sometimes we go back and take a deep breath. It will happen. You
yeah,
will get a car. It will happen. It's a matter of when. It may not happen today, but it'll happen tomorrow. And also, I was thinking that why not look at activities once things settle down a little bit that they normally wouldn't do in their country? So you want to look for bridges, we mentioned that earlier, like bridges creating ways to meet people. And that's also kind of, which reminds me how one makes friendships
yes,
is culturally and personally defined. So we do go into that because that can be very disappointing, is
yes.
trying to create a friendship.
Mm.
And there's different components of what is a friend.
Do you find that building friendships across cultures is different from building friends inside your own native culture?
I think it is, and I think it isn't. Like the activity, way American, generally speaking, it's the activity that you do. This is your tennis friend. This is your recipe cooking friend.
Yes,
So usually American have a tendency to compartmentalize their friendships, and that doesn't go over well in some aspects. But then if people are coming to another country, the openness is there.
mm,
So
mm,
they might find, okay, and I think it's chemistry. I tell them, I said, listen to your chemistry. It's the chemistry of how you feel with that person.
yes,
And you just go with it. And it also takes time. It takes nourishment and time to make a friend, but at least you can feel some connection. It comes out slowly. Small steps. You don't want to get burned in that friendship when you're in it. When you're
mm,
sensitive, they're kind of in a vulnerable place, kind of a hyper sensitivity there. What's wrong with me? In the end, I've had people that, let's say they're VPs in a company. Do you know what their biggest concern is?
tell us.
Making friends, being
Yes,
accepted.
yes,
It's not leadership style. in the workplace. It's like, how can I begin a conversation
Mm,
outside of my work? I don't know how to do that.
mm,
I had one person where they said, it's fine, like work topics, no problem. But he said, I don't know when it comes to lunchtime and social time. How do I ask non-invasive questions? And that was a big concern for him. So we went over it. We made 10 or 20 questions that he feels comfortable to begin a conversation with somebody else.
and even the idea of non-invasive questions is interesting because hasn't that changed over time?
Yes. So we keep it open, like, tell me a little bit about where you grew up, or, in the back of the mind is, why are they asking this question? But we try to develop questions that he was comfortable with, and yet it didn't feel too personal. What's a personal question? Are you married? How old are you? So that could be in different cultures, that's just fine. And what
Mm.
works in the USA culture.
And does this have a generational component as well? Because I find I'm a very nosy person. I am incredibly curious.
Sometimes it's who is asking the question. They can get away with whatever question that they ask.
Yeah.
So I think it's beautifully complex, isn't it? When we go across cultures, the feeling to depend on our intuitive self. I'm going
Yes.
to ask this. I have a feeling this might be a higher risk question. And sometimes when we preface first and just say, I'm just a really curious person. Don't kill me for asking it, but I'm dying to ask. Can I go ahead and ask this question? And sometimes that gives most people will say, sure, sure, go ahead and ask. And then I think in the back of the mind is, why are we asking? Is it
Yes.
to connect? Is it,
Yeah.
do I want to hear a certain answer?
I think that's very, very, very wise counsel actually to actually preface your questions and to organize your questions in a way that is not threatening and is not interrogation, but is
Exactly.
actually has a sense of grace and purpose and connection about behind it. Because we're all about connection, right? Being in this profession, that's what that I think is the sole purpose of everything that we do. Would you agree with that, Kathy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no, I mean, it's tearing down the walls.
Yes.
We have people that build walls, and then we have people who want to tear down those walls. And it's two completely different guidelines of living.
It impacts not only our personal life, but also our professional life. And you mentioned earlier the VPs who want to actually build connection and make friends, and that is their priority. So, how does it develop? How can we develop our professional development or our identity quicker? Because this is a fast-paced life. Everybody wants
Mm,
results. We're
hmm
all very suddenly we're like, I can press a button and something magical can happen.
hmm
Um, what would you say to the frustration level that we all experience in building connection?
Well, some things can't be forced. You just can't, it's like making wine. You can't rush it.
Yes.
And it could be the right person, but it's not the right time. And then I go back on the activity.
Mm,
I'm a big one that, is what's the activity that you're doing, or shared experiences. And I'm not even going to say I mean, shared background really helps, but there's a lot of people that I'm close to. We don't have the same kind of background, but perhaps we share the same kind of or compatible worldviews.
mm,
And I think that makes a difference in the friendship and developing that. You
yes.
can't rush it.
Kathy, tell us a
Yes.
little bit about your repatriation experience, please.
Well, I have one word: painful. It was painful. And I had spent a total of 10 years overseas, but 7 years in Brazil. And little did I know, because we didn't have the language to what was going on at that time.
Mm.
So we're looking at, I came back in the 90s, and there was, that I knew of at that time, very little language or structure to repatriation. Nobody told me.
Mm.
So when I came back after 7 years, in addition to this, what happens to a lot of people when repatriation, they go to a different place in
Yes.
their same country. So I'm from small town Michigan, and I came to Atlanta. And I remember just like, it's that vision of being in the water, you're barely dog paddling. And then also I had to find a job, and I was in the South. And I couldn't understand. I remember my sister had to translate for me, English to English, of the cashier in small town Georgia. And I would look, I said, what did she tell me? So there was language. There was, and at the time, of course, technology was slower paced, but there were differences in technology. And then I wanted to share my experiences. And this happens to so many of us. People are not interested.
Mm.
So everything was new, everything, job, friends, everything in my experience. And so usually the reverse culture shock is, it took me, I can say, 2 years. And I thought one thing that came to my mind was, I look American, speak American, but I'm not thinking. I became so Brazilianized that
Yes.
even my physical space changed. I was driving like a Brazilian there. So there were lots of things where and it depended how much integration went on, whatever country that you're living in. So I felt like, yeah, I was at that stage of integrating. I had a relationship, speaking the language, daily life, that I wasn't even aware that my thinking had shifted until I
Mm.
came home. Like after 3 or 4 years, they say usually about 3 or 4 years, coming back, and there was a wedding in the family. And I thought, oh, so it was the father of the bride. And I said, I met him for the first time. And I went for a Brazilian greeting with a air
Yeah.
kiss on both sides. And he went, oh. And I remember
Mm.
just forgetting where I was. So I
Mm.
had adopted several of the customs that are not USA American, but Brazilian.
Yes.
And that took a while. And then it wasn't until I went to the Intercultural Communication Institute out in Oregon that Janet Bennett, the cultural marginality, that feeling, that I said, oh, thank you, putting language to that. And so, boy, now I understand. Okay. And it took
Mm.
years. Now it's a little bit different because we have more with becoming more
Yes.
knowledge about that. So I
Yes.
think the empathy that I feel with people that are repatriate, they underestimate
Yes. We
that
do.
it's so true. One has to go through it. I think and I also look at it as change management. I rather say, how do you manage change rather than the culture shock? The only culture shock I really had was going to the Netherlands as an exchange student. That because I wasn't prepared at all.
Mm.
And so I rather say, which I say to my clients, I said we're all functioning. You speak English, you're doing really well. It's just how do we deal with change?
What is the difference between dealing with change and dealing with transformation? I
Well,
ask
yeah.
this because
Mhm.
I think sometimes when we think about change management nowadays, we think in terms of professions and corporations and, you know, certain cadre of personal development, especially in the language. And I think when we move into the idea of transformation, is that who we become is actually different when we're overseas, and that's very
Mhm.
hard to describe, measure, articulate.
I think, the first when you asked that, my first thought was, well, there is a difference. Let me see what it is. Um,
Mm.
so maybe managed change could be outside of that work. things that are challenge rather than change management, manage the change that I have.
Yes.
What do I think about that change? Transformation to me is not something we can push a button and change. Well, I remember, not that I'm a fan of Dr. Phil, but one of the things that Dr. Phil, if you want to change, you can change. Well,
Yes.
yes and no, it's a gray matter in the brain and
Yeah.
repetition and all of that. So I see change as kind of this ongoing transformation may be the result of that. And
Mm,
again, then I go back to the prefix like transform. The form is changed.
mm, mm.
And so my expectation would not be, to me, that feels like a lot of stress, like to transform, like there's a big, big change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that may happen over time that perhaps it's hard to evaluate that for myself.
Exactly.
Transform. It's not tangible for me, but I
Yeah.
know my thinking has changed throughout the years, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Transform feels like a really big step to me. Just
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it seems sort of indefinable except by the individual who's undergoing it. Correct?
yeah. And also
I,
I just had another thought is if you had like a really major incident that you have like that before and then you have that after, it could be a possible of transform, like an
mm,
accident, for example.
yes.
So something like a near death experience, I hate to bring that up, but I mean, those kind of things. And then you might have, okay, before that
Mm,
defining moment,
mm,
and then after that, that might be that window of transformation. And
mm. Well, this is very fascinating. So, uh, tell me about the upside of repatriation. What's on the other side of this for people once they go through this painful 2 years and they work with the change and they finally experience the transformation? Can you describe that for me so that we listeners can have see the light at the end of the tunnel, please?
exactly, I'm still thinking of the word painful. I think, one thing when I came back, Doreen, it was kind of interesting, as basic as it was. Oh, I get to speak English and everybody understands me. Oh, that was a really good thing.
Yes, yes.
So I would say that's a real positive. And also, uh, at the time, is that things were more convenient. I can do business on the phone. I don't
Yes.
need, USA Americans, they kind of, you can do a lot of things without meeting the person.
Mm,
As in contrast to other cultures, that might be a difficult thing. So
yes.
I really like that I could call up and whatever business was at hand and have that done. So I would say the convenience, the language. Other
Excellent.
than that, I was pretty good in other countries.
Yes, yes. I have loved, in some measure, I've loved everywhere I have lived. Have you had that experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
People have asked. It's interesting you say that because people have asked, what's the best country? What's the country that you've liked the best? And I said, I resonated. Let's say Brazil. I really connected with Brazil. But it doesn't mean that I didn't with the other countries. There's something good in every country, even the experience I had in El Salvador during the Civil War.
Mm.
There's something good in every country, that silver lining. And so that's kind of hard to say, you
And
know.
Kathy, is it possible that part of that is the lens with which you look at things? It's
Hmm.
the lens that you have made a conscious choice to be a multicultural person, to see the good in every or find some good. It's not always obvious, but you have to
Hmm.
look for the good. And isn't that part of who you are?
Yes. Yes.
So you
I
are a wonderful example and a wonderful mentor for people to consider working with. So before we get to those details, I've got a couple of lightning questions for you. Are you ready for those?
I love the name Lightning. Is that light? Okay.
Yes.
I love that.
So if there was a language that you don't currently speak now, but you would love to instantly speak, what language would it be?
German. That
And
comes immediately to my mind.
Excellent. And if you have a country or a place that you could transport yourself to today, where would it be?
The first that came to my mind, Mongolia.
Hmm. And if you were to return to a country that you have visited, which one would you choose?
Brazil. Brazil's
Mm,
my second home.
mm. And what three words would you use to describe home?
Three words: comfortable, relaxed, people.
Mm. And Kathy, if people want to work with you in the cross-cultural field and becoming comfortable in moving to the US or moving somewhere else, how can we find you? What is the easiest way to find you? And we put all these details in the show notes.
Well, the easiest, I do have a website. It's interculturalenglisherservices.com. And but on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's a wonderful resource. So LinkedIn, and most of my work I'm outsourced from destination services. That's where I
Okay.
get most of my work. So I would say those two, definitely LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, this is wonderful to speak with you, and I look forward to perhaps another conversation in the future. Do you have any
Well,
questions for me?
no, I just love it. In fact, when I grow up, this is what I want to do is have my own podcast. So you're a wonderful incentive, inspiration for me. So I
Oh,
appreciate that. Yeah, I've had the microphone for years and but I haven't started. So I think your program is just wonderful. You must come across some amazing discussions and
well, the best thing about being a podcaster is the amazing people that I get to have conversations with, the heart and the depth with which we share or we can glean information and build bridges together is simply astounding. So, thank you so much for being
thank
with us
you.
today on Nomadic Diaries.
Thank you, Doreen. I really enjoyed it.